My name is Paula. My favorite color is green, and I love animals, frogs being one of my favorites. I'm a student at the University of Toronto, and I'm going to be teaching you about frogs. Let's take a look at our agenda for today. First off, we will have a lesson about frogs and then jump into activity time. Here, we will do a materials check, a safety check, and then build a frog habitat. Let's begin with our lesson. What are frogs? Frogs are amphibians. Amphibians are small vertebrates. Vertebrates are animals with a backbone. Amphibians need water. They can live inside the water or around the water. Right here, we have a picture of a Cuban tree frog. Let's take a look at some more frogs. Wow, there's so many types of frogs. At the top, we have a blue poison dart frog, a red-eyed tree frog, and a mimic poison frog. These are all examples of tropical frogs. There are many more examples. Down here, we have the northern spring peeper, the wood frog, and the northern leopard frog. These are all examples of North American frogs. The northern spring peeper, which is one of my favorites, got its name from the chirping sound it makes during the spring. Isn't that interesting? Okay, where do frogs live? Frogs need fresh water to reproduce. Right here, you can see an example of some fresh water. Fresh water is places like ponds and lakes, not the ocean. The ocean has salt water, which is not good for frogs. Frogs can be found on every continent except for Antarctica. Here, you can see a picture of Antarctica. There's a lot of ice and snow, and you can imagine it's very cold there. So you might see why frogs wouldn't like it there. Some frogs prefer to always stay near water. Others live in woodlands and rainforests. Right here, you can see a beautiful example of a woodland. Some frogs even live in the desert. Okay, let's take a look at the life cycle of a frog. Let's begin with the first stage, the fertilized egg. Fertilized means that the male sperm and the female frog's egg have joined together. The female frog lays lots of eggs covered in jelly to protect them from other animals. Here in this picture, you can see a lot of little eggs stuck together and covered in that jelly, which keeps them nice and safe. The next stage is the tadpole stage. Tadpoles have a long tail, like you can see in this image here. They swim like fish and breathe with their gills. As they eat small water plants and algae, they grow hind legs and lungs. In this picture, you can't see their hind legs yet. The next stage is the froglet stage. Now the frog has 2 front legs and 2 hind legs, as you can see in this image. Its tail gets shorter and shorter, and its lungs begin to grow bigger and bigger. This lets the froglet float on top of water. Froglets will use the nutrients from its shrinking tail as food. Isn't that interesting? The final stage is the adult frog stage. Now we're back to our Cuban tree frog. Now the tail is gone and the frog can spend its time on land where it eats insects. The female frogs can return back to the water and lay more eggs. This starts the cycle all over again. Okay, now it's time to reflect. What is the difference between a tadpole, which you can see on the left, and a froglet, which you see on the right? Let's think back to our lesson. Maybe you can remember some things about their body parts. You can remember some things about what they eat. You can remember some things about how they breathe. All of these are some potential differences. Now let's think about how human pollution might affect a frog's life cycle. In this habitat where the frog could be living, there is garbage. There's plastic bags, you can see some cardboard, and that just doesn't look like a very good place to live. How can this dirty pond affect a frog? You can see the frog here in some dirty water. How is that dangerous for the frog? Where will the frog lay its eggs? Maybe the frog will get stuck inside the garbage. What will happen if some dangerous chemicals or waste gets inside the frog's skin or inside the egg? Those are all things you can think of. Okay, now it's time to apply. Let's use what we learned about frogs in creating a frog habitat. Using materials around your house, we can create a healthy habitat for frogs. Let's do a materials check. You will need a shallow bowl or container, some fresh water. You can collect some from a pond, a river, a little lake you might have around your house, or from the bathtub or sink. Make sure to ask your parents for help because it might be heavy. You will need some rocks. I have some rocks that I collected earlier around a lake and I have around my house. You'll need a piece of green foam. If you don't have foam, construction paper like I'm using will be good, or you can even use some cardboard. You will need a pencil, a pen, or a marker to do some outlines. You will need some scissors. Make sure to have your parents help because they are sharp. You will need a piece of plain paper. And you will need some colorful pencil crayons or markers for coloring in. Okay, now let's review our safety rules. Make sure to listen carefully and follow all instructions. No eating or drinking during this activity, not even the water that we will be using, okay? Keep your hands and all of your materials away from your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, and other people around you. Do not run. Make sure that your shoelaces are tied. Do not throw materials at people around you. Tie back any long hairs that you might have. Okay, and keep any electronics, maybe wires, batteries, phones, iPads, away from the water that we're using and any other liquids and heat. Okay, now it's time to begin. For the first step, we're going to draw a lily pad on the piece of construction paper, foam, or cardboard, whichever one you can use, okay? You are going to copy the shape of this lily pad here onto the piece of paper. It does not have to be perfect. Back here, you can see some pictures of some real lily pads in the background, okay? Your outline should look something like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Next, you will repeat the same step 3 times so that you have many different lily pads, 3 in total. Then carefully, with some scissors, you will cut out your lily pad. That way, you can get a beautiful lily pad like this. Okay? The next step, you will draw an outline of a frog looking from the top, just like this. Then you can color it in with your pencil crayons. Remember, you can use some of the patterns we saw earlier. Maybe a bright blue frog or a green-eyed tree frog, or you can copy the pattern that I used for my frog. Then you will cut out your frog carefully and then fold it in half vertically. Okay, like this. That way your frog can stand up. Isn't that cute? Okay. Next, you will use the fresh water to fill your container and create a shallow pond. Do not fill it all the way to the top. Grab your rocks and place them into your container so that the top of at least one or a couple rocks peeks out from the top, just like this. Now you can add your lily pads to the top so it floats, and you can add your frog to the lily pad or to the rocks. Now you have a frog habitat. Let's take a look. If you would like, you can add some extra greens around your habitat, some more lily pads or some more rocks. Okay, let's reflect on our activity. What stage in the life cycle is the frog that we created? Remember, this is the outline of the frog we made. You might have colored it in differently. How do you know what stage it's in? Here's a reminder. Here are some eggs. Here are some tadpoles. Here is a froglet. And here is an adult frog. You can think of the different body parts. You can think of it being outside the water versus inside the water. Okay, next, let's think about why does a frog habitat have a pond? Let's think back to why a frog like ours might be inside of a pond. Here's a picture on the right that will give you a hint. Okay, now let's think about how we can keep our frogs safe in our habitat. We can think about the type of water we use, maybe fresh water or ocean water, which is better. Let's think back. We can think about what's inside the water, maybe some nice greens, some nice lily pads, or would they prefer garbage bags like we saw in another picture earlier, which is better? And now we can look here at this frog who likes to be hiding. Some frogs like being underneath leaves. So in your backyard, maybe at home or in your front yard, you can keep some leaves on top of your grass and the little frog might like to hide underneath there to stay safe. You can think of all these different ideas. How can we keep our habitat safe for our frogs? Okay, thank you for engaging. If you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. You can email Start Science right here at this email address or visit our webpage. Right here is the link. Thank you again for listening. My name is Paula and I hope you learned a lot about frogs. Thank you.